Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and this week I spoke to Charlie Crist, who is hoping to be the Democrat running this fall against Ron DeSantis. We started with a conversation about his record on abortion and his reaction to the leak of the Supreme Court decision that shows the court is about to strike down Roe versus Wade.
It's outrageous, Jim. I mean, the notion that we're going to have, it looks like, a ruling come down next month in June that's going to take away a woman's right to choose. It's appalling, but it's already was an issue in Florida because Governor DeSantis recently signed a bill that will take away a woman's right to choose too. And I think that's wrong. I think it is disrespectful to all women. I was raised with 3 sisters, so I got this pretty early. And, I understand that, everybody has their own point of view on this thing. But for a governor who talks about Florida being the freest state in the country, well, apparently not if you're a woman and want to exercise your right to choose.
Okay, for clarity's sake, what the bill the governor signed was lowering the time in which a woman can avail herself of abortion to 15 weeks. That it will move from, the state was at 24 weeks, it moved to 15. So it wasn't an outright ban. But let me ask you
if I might, Jim, please forgive me. You're correct. I agree with that assessment. But it doesn't have any exception for even rape or incest, which is, what's the right word? Draconian to me. It's barbaric.
Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. What, if any, restrictions would you place on an abortion?
I support Roe versus Wade. And, that permits that a woman has a choice up in both the first trimester, the second trimester, not really in the third trimester. And I would agree with that for the most part, except, in cases where there's the life or the health of the mother or the child.
Where do you put the issue of parental consent for minors seeking abortion?
I think that what's important is that you preserve a woman's right to choose. What's challenging here is you're talking about minors in your immediate question, right, Jim? Mm-hmm. And it's I think there's a greater sensitivity there. And I think that, this takes me back to the state Senate a little bit, which has been a long time ago. And I'm drawing on my memory. So, but I think that, there was a requirement in a piece of legislation, 24-hour waiting period for minors, which I supported. I did. And earlier, though, I had voted against a 24-hour waiting period for all women because I felt that was intrusive and wrong. And frankly, I did that as a Republican. On the healthcare committee in the state Senate, my no vote killed the bill. It never went to the Senate floor because it died on a 3-3 tie.
So just to be clear, on the issue of parental consent, should a child, let's say under 16, seeking an abortion need to have a parent's consent or an avenue in which they could get either a court or somebody, an advocate? Because obviously if a person is the subject of rape or incest within the family, they may not be able to get parental consent. Should there be any sort of step for a minor to get an abortion, or should any minor be able to just get one on their own?
Well, as I said, I think that's a more sensitive thing because you're talking about a minor. And I think that, you have to evaluate that with a physician and with the parents, so long as there's not, as you said, an incest situation you're dealing with there, and rely on their input for doing what's right.
I just want to ask a couple more questions on this, then we'll move on to the campaign. Your position seems to have changed over time. In 2006, when you ran for governor, you described yourself as a pro-life Republican at the time. And in 2010, in the Senate race, you said you would, quote, fight for pro-life legislative efforts. What's changed since 2010?
Nothing. And let me explain. I was just talking to my sister, who happens to be a physician, my younger sister, and was just kind of reflecting because of what's going on, with the Supreme Court, how she felt. And she said, well, Charlie, I've always been pro-life. And I know you've said that in the past, and I happen to know what you meant by it. You meant that you're for life. And I hope, like you, that everybody is for life. And so that's what I meant. That's how I felt. And any vote that I've taken or veto I've made, which I have, has been to protect a woman's right to choose. I cited the one back in 1995 on the Healthcare Committee. The veto came, Jim, in my last year as governor in 2010, when the legislature sent me a bill that would require a woman pay for and get an ultrasound before having an abortion. I vetoed it because I thought it was unfairly intrusive and creating too much difficulty for a woman in that situation. And in Congress, I have 100% rating by Planned Parenthood. NARAL have already voted for a Roe versus Wade law in the US Congress. So my record, I think, is crystal clear. And I think some competitors are trying to make it something else that it's not. I've been endorsed by Nancy Pelosi, and she specifically talked about Charlie will defend reproductive rights in the video of her endorsement that she made. That's why I got endorsed by Kathy Castor, my fellow Tampa Bay member of Congress. And so I think I'm in good shape on this issue because I care about women. I respect them, and I'll always fight for their right to choose. And I am the only candidate in this race for governor who actually, as your governor, has vetoed an anti-abortion bill.
So let's talk about the race. This is the first time we've had a chance to talk since the legislative session this year. Give me your takeaway of what the Republican-controlled legislature did in Tallahassee this time around.
I think it was a disaster. And they didn't do it alone. They did it with Governor DeSantis, and most of it at his urging. And let's start with, Disney World. I mean, unbelievable. I grew up in Florida. I moved here when I was 3 years old, born in Pennsylvania. When I grew up, I can remember going down the street as a young kid, and we had a black and white TV. I've been around that long. But the neighbor down the street, a nice Jewish couple, had a color television. And so they would invite my three sisters and me every Sunday night, I think it was at 7 o'clock, to watch the show, The Wonderful World of Disney. You probably remember it, Jim. And for the notion that that kind of a revered icon of the Sunshine State is under attack by our governor is mind-blowing. I mean, you know what that does for tourism in Florida? What that does for employment, and they employ 80,000 people. And the fact that we have that in the Sunshine State is extraordinary. And because they were exercising their right to free speech, which you as a journalist understand how important that is, just because they wanted to, speak, he got ticked off at them and decides he's going to be punitive to them. What kind of public servant, if you serve with a servant's heart, would do that, especially in Florida with such an important industry? I mean, is he anti-business? He also sued the cruise industry in our state. You're in Miami. You know how important that is. I've been told that supports about 600,000 jobs in Florida. I mean, the guy's anti-business. He's anti-democracy. He signed a law relating to the opportunity to vote by reducing mail-in ballots. I mean, and he's anti-women. And that's more pertinent to what we're talking about. What they did in the legislature during the session was pass this ridiculous law that's going to take away a woman's right to choose. That is disrespectful. It is anti-women. So the guy's anti-business with Disney and cruise lines. He's anti-women with the abortion law that they passed and he signed. He's anti-voting, for making it hard for African Americans and minorities to vote by not having drop boxes. They won't even call them drop boxes anymore in minority communities throughout the state of Florida. I mean, if this guy's not an autocrat, I don't know what is. I'm a Democrat supporting and defending democracy. He's an autocrat supporting and defending autocracy with preemption laws,
So let me just jump in here.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm passionate about it. I apologize.
So if, there's been a lot of talk recently as if that if you were the nominee and you were to challenge Ron DeSantis, and Val Demings is the nominee for the Senate race against Marco Rubio, that if you and Val Demings lose, given everything you just said, that really means that Florida is a conservative red state and that Democrats nationally should give up on the idea of competing here. If you lose, should Democrats nationally give up on Florida?
I'm not going to lose. So no, they shouldn't give up on Florida. If, either Val or I did lose, and I think we're both going to win, then what you said would be true. But I know Florida's purple. It's about a third registered Republican, about a third registered Independent, and about a third registered Democratic. That's purple, almost by definition. And remember this governor, DeSantis, got elected by the smallest amount of any gubernatorial victory in the history of our state that I'm aware of. It was 1/4 of 1%. This guy is not a giant. He's a paper tiger.
Why do you think he does the things that he does? In other words, what motivation? Is it about Florida, or is it about his national ambition?
It's not anything to do with Florida, and it's an excellent question, and one the voters should ask themselves too. When you're doing all this red meat Republican hard right stuff, not even moderate Republican stuff, he's looking toward the 2024 Republican primary for president of the United States. And he's trying to out-Trump Donald Trump. It's crystal clear to me what he's doing. And I think it's why he's getting so much money from around the country, from other people who feel the same way about the issues he's promoting. It is stunning to me. And he has completely forgotten Florida in the process. I really think that he is, in fact, so laser focused on the Republican primary, not even Republican general election voters, Jim, Republican primary voters in 2024, that he's intoxicated by it. I think he's dreaming about going to sleep in the White House already and forgotten all about Florida and supporting public schools, supporting our school teachers, making sure that middle income Floridians can afford Florida. We were just ranked the most expensive state to live in, more than California or New York. And, if you try to buy a home in Florida, good luck. If you're a millionaire or a billionaire, you're probably doing okay, but most of us are not. We're middle income, paycheck to paycheck, or senior citizens on a fixed income. You can't pay for gas. You can't, buy a car. You can't afford to rent an apartment, buy a home. It's outrageous. And the governor could be defending and fighting on all of those fronts, and he's doing nothing on any of them except promoting his future to try to be president of the United States.